No, I don't want to go live just yet. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out. This is our second PTA meeting of the 2018-19 school year here at Cardinal Forest Elementary. So today is a very special meeting, just so you guys all know. It's the second time we're recording our meeting. It's the first time we're trying to hopefully attempt to put it live on Facebook and YouTube. Quick plug-in, if you're not following us, go to Cardinal Forest PTA. You can find us on Facebook through Cardinal Forest Elementary School PTA, and on YouTube, you simply look up Cardinal Forest ES PTA, and you'll find our channel. Just look for our logo. On Facebook, you can see a picture of our school, so you know that you're following the right PTA. And that's really a good place to post any questions, follow any upcoming events, and now you can take a look at our PTA meetings. For those of you joining us live or watching the recordings later, feel free to type any questions in the comment section. And at the end of the day today, we have reserved some time to answer the top 2 questions. Any other questions, we'll be sure to get back to you through email and respond to you directly. All right, we'll also be uploading our agenda to our website and on Facebook in case you guys want to follow along and view the recording. All right, so the meeting is officially called to order, 7:10 a.m. I wanted to
PM.
I do see a few new faces here today, so I wanted to go around the room and have a very brief round robin introduction. If you can simply say your name and the grade that your student's in, just so we get a sense of the presence here. And for the record, we do have quorum, so we have some items we'll be voting on at the end of today's meeting. Can we start over there on the right side?
Hi, I'm Leanne Seawright. I have 2 children, 4th and 2nd grade.
Leanne. And Leanne she's a part of our board. Right? Who are we talking about?
Hi, I'm Kim. I have the same grades, 4th and 2nd.
Kim is our Spirit Night board.
I'm Emily Swinehart. I have a kindergartner and a 1st grader.
Welcome.
I'm Stephen Boken. I have a kindergarten.
Welcome.
I'm Caroline Moritz. I have a 1st grader.
Welcome.
Here, Hannah, principal.
Okay.
Sharon Langston. I have a 1st and 3rd grader, and I'm the secretary.
Erica Jones, I have a 2nd grader.
Liesa Timmerman. I have a 2nd grader and a kindergarten.
Lon Withrow, and I have a kindergarten.
Paige Ellis, and I'm a 4th grader.
Sarah Helper, I have a 4th and a 3rd grader.
Lisa Willis, 4th grader.
I'm Susie Kiefaber. I have a 3rd and 5th grader. They don't go here, but I'm the school counselor.
Keith Hurst, assistant principal, and I have a 3rd grader and 2 preschool daycare, and they don't go here either.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone once again for being out here. I do want to remind you guys that as of the beginning of this year, we're looking for a new president, a new treasurer. So overall, our board is shifting. So we'll make an announcement, but we do want to put it out there. We're looking actively for board members for the following year. All right. Without any further ado, I do want to introduce Ms. Susan Kiefaber. Kiefaber, sorry.
Kiefaber, no, you got it. It was right.
She is our school counselor, and she is going to be touching on the topic of bullying, providing us some guidance and resources. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll walk around with the mic. Make sure you
Okay. So it's October, which, as everyone knows, is bullying month. Bullying prevention month. We all know that. Yeah, no, I know. It's not very well advertised, but October is bullying prevention month. So I thought that this would be a good time where I could just share a brief presentation with you to clarify a little bit about what is bullying, what isn't bullying, what is harassment, and then the school's role, parents' role, students' role in both prevention and response to bullying and harassment. So let me see if the clicker works. What do I click?
Got to go on to the full screen first.
I thought I was on the full screen. I am on the full screen.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, okay. So again, I just want to make sure that we're really clarifying for everyone. And this is something we've also done with staff too, not just with parents, because we hear the word bully, everyone hears it every day in society and school. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so I want to clarify, I want to talk about roles, like I said, we're going to talk just for a brief minute about cyberbullying, and we'll talk more later about why it's brief, because the school's role is not quite as big when it comes to cyberbullying response. And then I have some resources that I can share with you. So, questions? Okay. So I'm going to start with defining harassment, and that is the big term. We do hear harassment all the time, particularly in the news right now. We hear a lot about harassment. Harassment is kind of the big umbrella that bullying falls under. So we start using the word harassment with our students around 4th grade. Harassment is a big concept, but basically it involves any kind of emotional abuse, physical, verbal threats, assault, bullying, property destruction or theft of property. And harassment encompassing, and let me show you the next slide. So harassment has bullying under it. Bullying is a form of harassment, but they're different in a few important ways. So when we're thinking about harassment, harassment can be intentional, often is, but sometimes it's unintentional too. And we'll touch a little bit more on why that is. Harassment is also, might just be a one-time thing, or it could be a repeated thing over time. The main features, if something is harassment, is that the behavior that's happening is unwanted by the person it's happening to, and it creates a hostile environment. And so starting in 4th grade, we're teaching these features to kids, and we are teaching them the words hostile environment, which means that you're feeling unsafe, unwelcome, and that whatever is happening is making you not want to participate in that. In school is what we're talking about. But so we really try and clarify with kids that when these two things are happening, there's all this unwanted behavior and it feels like an unsafe environment, that is a good indication that it might be harassment. When bullying or harassment, and this is kind of where this bleeds into real life, outside of school life, when it becomes targeted to a student's identifying features, gender, race, religious affiliation, things like that, that's when it can become discrimination. And so discrimination is something we teach this to the kids, because this is not just a school thing where we're worried about violating SR&R. As we know, this is a life thing, right? That we need to make sure that kids understand what harassment and discrimination might look like both in school and as we get older, because it is a violation of anti-discrimination laws that are enforced by the Office of Civil Rights. So we'll talk about this going forward, but the Office of Civil Rights mandates that schools teach about harassment, starting for elementary school, it's grades 4, 5, and 6. And so for us, for most of Fairfax County, it's counselors that teach these lessons about harassment. So your kids should be familiar, if you have older kids, as the year progresses, with the words harassment, with hostile environment, and things like that. And we try and be very intentional about teaching the features of harassment and how it can look a lot like things that maybe aren't harassment and bullying or not. So let me give a couple of examples. Questions about this? I think giving some examples might clarify the questions before we start. Okay. So here's some examples. And I will mention one of the forms of harassment that we teach about in 6th grade only is sexual harassment. And we use the word sexual harassment. And you parents and those of you who've had 6th graders know you do get an option to opt your child out of that. But when we're teaching about, there's verbal harassment and physical and cyber harassment, we also need kids to understand that there's also sexual harassment. And when you see, so this first example is an example of sexual harassment, but you can see, and this comes straight from one of the lessons that we teach. Amber makes fun of Michelle for kissing Brian. Michelle is embarrassed, thinking that others believe this, and does not want to eat lunch in the cafeteria or go to recess. So this is what you would consider a form of sexual harassment. And when you see this, you're like, what? But because this behavior is unwanted, it's creating a hostile environment, and it's sexual in nature, kissing is, then we would consider it sexual harassment. A couple of things that I always highlight with the kids. Number one, it doesn't matter whether Michelle kissed Brian. It could be true or not true. The point is that clearly Michelle doesn't want this being spread around about her. And the second thing is, a lot of times when we hear those words sexual harassment, we're thinking about opposite gender. But in this case, it's Amber, the girl, who is creating a form of sexual harassment against Michelle, another girl. And so, kids hearing this for the first time are very like, what? Like, it can often be, and for adults too, very contrary to what we're taught to believe. But this kind of thing, I got a third grade boy. He likes to tease his sister about silly things like this, right? But we have to have that conversation of, but if you do this in school and you're teasing someone about kissing someone or hugging someone, that can be a form of harassment, and that we really have to be careful about our words. So that's one form. Another example would be kind of the general, what you think about, kid knocks books out of somebody's hand and says, I'm going to get you, a threat. That's a physical harassment and also a verbal if they're threatening. This has happened once, which is why it's harassment and not bullying. And we'll talk about bullying in a minute. Bullying is something that's continued. But as of now, this would be harassment. And then this one, kids always, oh man, I love the conversations with sixth graders about this. Jennifer thinks Scott is cute. She takes pictures of him during the day without him knowing and posts them to Instagram. This is an example from the county that they've given us, and we show it to kids, and the kids have to decide, is this harassment or not? And we have to think, is it unwanted? Well, he doesn't know about it. So clearly, he's not consenting, and I teach them the word consent. He's not consenting to having his pictures taken and posted on social media. And now he's creating a hostile environment online, or she is creating a hostile environment online for him, because now these pictures are going up. And the kids are like, what? I mean, that like blows our mind that here's something that, again, here's that might not be intentional. This person might not be intentionally like, I'm going to sexually harass someone by taking their picture and put it, but because it's creating this hostile environment and it's not wanted behavior, it would fall into that category. And this, of course, this type of cyber, online stuff that goes on is more and more prevalent. And so I do try to stress those. Questions about these examples? So this is kind of broad, how is harassment addressed at school. When we talk about bullying, I'm going to talk more specifically about people's roles in school. But basically, the main thing is if harassment has been reported in any kind, and even if the kid doesn't use harassment, but if they've said, this is what's happened, we are mandated to investigate it as a school. And if we find out that harassment or discriminatory behavior has happened, we have to take action to do three things. We have to make sure that harassment ends immediately. Oftentimes that means that we're bringing the parent of the accused, the aggressor in. We're giving consequences based on that SR&R. So we do everything we can to end it immediately. And then we want to make sure that that hostile environment is gone, because they have to come to school every day. And so they can't be coming into an unsafe environment. So that might be we're changing seats. Maybe in the upper grades, there's special schedule changes. Every once in a while, it might even end up leading to a class change, and definitely extra monitoring. And so we take that very seriously, of making sure that they're feeling, safe to come to school. And then the third thing is we have to make sure that it doesn't recur. So we are really focused on prevention. Again, we're required to do those lessons, but in addition, we are meeting with the students. We're really emphasizing the importance of reporting when something is happening. And then there's an extra step, and this is kind of administrator step, that there's some extra reporting that we have to do to this Office of Equity and Compliance if there's been harassment or discrimination. So this is just to let you know, like, there are formal steps in place and that the school takes it very seriously, as we are mandated to. Questions about, or anything you want to throw into this part?
No, I'll wait till you're done.
Okay, sorry. Okay. good to move on.
Are you going to bring up more or less like the steps?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So narrowing in what bullying. So bullying falls under harassment. But there's 3 defining features of bullying. For something to be bullying, it has to be these 3 things. First, there has to be intent to harm. So with harassment, again, it could be unintended. It could be somebody's over there telling a joke about a religious group that really hurts and offends somebody, and that's unintended harassment, right? They weren't intending it, but it did. Bullying is intended. The behavior is intended to harm or humiliate or intimidate. So that's the first feature. Secondly, is this perceived power imbalance. So the target, the person who's being bullied, has this feeling, and whether it's real or not, the aggressor is making them feel like they have no power to stop it. And maybe that's because they tried to stop it and it hasn't, or maybe it's just because of the social dynamics of the situation. But there's always, when we think of bullying, there's always a power imbalance. Because if Keith is over here calling me names and me saying stop stops it, then I have some power over that, right? But if it continues, then, and I'm feeling powerless, then that's the second defining feature. And the third is that it's repeated over time. So certainly there are things that happen that are intended to harm and there's a power imbalance, but it only ever happens one time and it's solved and there's consequences given and it's over. We don't call that bullying. The main feature of bullying is that it is something that goes on and it's repeated. And often what makes the difference is that bullying always starts as harassment, right? Because it starts once and then either someone doesn't report it or it doesn't get adequately handled when it's reported, and then it's enabled to continue. So bullying is very specifically intended to harm. There's a power imbalance and it's repeated over time. And it can be verbal, so it can be just words. It can be physical, obviously. It can be online, and it can also be relational. And sometimes you hear this called relational aggression. When you think, if you've had older kids, you think about 5th, 6th, 7th grade girls who like to one day sit by you at lunch and the next day leave you out, or spread a rumor about what you were saying to them over text and things like that. That is what we get in mind when we think about relational bullying. It does happen more with girls than boys. Boys tend to be more physical and verbal, but we see those all the time. There's a book, which is over here, you can look later, called My Secret Bully by Trudy Ludwig that deals with the topic of relational bullying. If that's something that has come up in your family, it's a really good book that addresses that. I use that starting with 3rd grade because I really think it's important to get that in there starting early. And then just some quick examples. So for the past 2 weeks, boys on the bus have been surrounding Brian and saying things to him like, you smell, you're dirty. Other people have seen it, no one stopped it, and now Brian feels outnumbered and he can't stand up for himself. And so the kids are always very quick to point out that one of the reasons that this is bullying is because it says for the past 2 weeks. So it's been happening. You take that out and this is a one-time thing, then we would call it just general harassment. An example of relational bullying. Nancy wants to play soccer with the other girls in her class during recess. The girls tell her every day she cannot play with them. And when we talk about these examples, the number of kids that are showing me that connection sign of, yeah, that's happened to me, or yeah, I see that. I mean, this kind of thing is happening a lot, and the kids don't necessarily have words for what it is or what it means. But when we're constantly leaving someone out, that is that form of relational bullying. And then in a cyber example, Mia posts videos of herself singing on YouTube. Other students regularly comment on the videos, calling her fat, tone deaf, and ugly. She removes the comments, but they continue to repost. She feels sad and doesn't want to go to school. So again, we've created this hostile environment, not only online, but also in school. And even though she's trying to put an end to it, it keeps happening, and she's feeling empowered. So questions about any of these bullying examples? Yeah.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned intent to cause harm as
Yeah.
criteria for bullying.
Yeah.
How much do you guys consider age as a factor in that? Because, as parents, we always think like, oh, no, my son didn't mean it or daughter. So for kindergarten, can intent be clear versus like a fifth or sixth grader?
We consider intent a lot developmentally. And a lot of that comes with conversations from the students, interviews with other students, and we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about kind of the roles and the steps, but totally. You rarely see true kindergarten bullying, right? Because they are just figuring out what it means to be social and interacting with other kids. So that's a great question. Yeah, we do consider it. So what is not bullying? I would say about, like, when I'm thinking about kids that come and talk to me and kids that say, I'm being bullied, I would say 80% of the time it's not bullying. It is one of these other things. Ordinary teasing, horseplay, argument, conflict. Usually it's conflict. And I know that it's conflict because a kid will come up to me and they'll say, such and such is bullying. Well, what happened? Well, he yelled at me and told me to get away from him. Well, what did you do? Well, I had taken his book and was, there's always these two sides going on. And a lot of it, especially with younger kids, is that they're just not, they don't have that self-awareness yet to see their side in it. And so my job is to do more conflict resolution than let's address bullying. These definitions are straight from the SR&R, as are all of the bullying and harassment definitions that I've given. So it can be rude, it can be mean, annoying, it might be aggressive, but that doesn't mean that it's crossed the line into bullying. A lot of the behavior that really, really gets kids to want to come tell a teacher or administrator or a counselor is annoying behavior or rude behavior, which is not excusable, which is we still work with the students, there's still consequences, but it's not quite to the same level as a bully accusation. And students interpret the behavior as bullying basically because that's the only word they hear. They're not hearing the language yet, and we're working with them. And we hope that you can partner with us in working with them to use language like argument, conflict, upset, whatever, to know that we don't just have to call every single incident that happens with someone, I was being bullied. We want to give them that language. Questions about this? We'll get some examples. Okay, so here's some non-examples, and again, this is from some bullying lessons that we would do. Oh my gosh, if you have a kindergarten or a first grade student, you probably hear this all the time. Lining up for recess, Jose cuts in front of Bruce. Bruce tells the teacher. Bruce comes home and tells you Jose was bullying me all day long. What did he do? He cut me in the last. All the time we are hearing this. Is it rude? Yes. Does it probably at some point, if it keeps happening, need to be addressed with Jose? Yeah. But is there intent to harm? Probably not, because when somebody's doing something like cutting in line, they're not thinking of the other person, they're thinking of themselves. Right? They're not intending to harm someone. Now, if they're shoving someone on the ground to get in line, that's a different conversation. But we like to give this type of non-example. Another non-example, this has to do with that power imbalance. So Mark sits next to Joe in math class. Joe's always flicking his pencil around the desk. He doesn't like it. Joe stops when Mark asks him to. So could this turn into a form of harassment or bullying? Maybe, except right now that power imbalance is not present because Mark has the power to make him stop. He asked him with his words and it worked. And then finally, a conflict example. This is little people. Tom asked Jim not to touch the Legos today because he wants to build the huge building all by himself, but Jim touched them anyway. Tom yells at Jim to get away. So is that mean to yell at a friend? Yes. It's not the way we should do it. But here we have a clear example of conflict. This is where teaching conflict resolution skills is something that I focus on, especially in the younger grades. And I use what's called Kelso's Choices, which I have a link to the website. And it's just this wheel. I'll show you. It's just this wheel of 9 different things you could do. Walk away, ignore, talk it out, tell the person to stop. And it's very simple and explicit. And we want to get the kids to the point where they can solve conflict on their own because nobody's being hurt, nobody's in danger, nobody's unsafe, and it's just an issue. Questions about any of this before we go into the final thing, which is kind of the school roles and responsibilities? Okay, so roles in bullying and harassment. We'll start with the students. When we think about prevention, obviously the students' number one role is they need to be abiding by those students' rights and responsibilities. If everyone did that, we would never have any bullying or harassment or conflict or anything. So we just put that out there. We know that kids aren't perfect. We forget. We also really encourage kids to be their own best advocate. So a lot of times when situations have turned into bullying, have gone over that line, and a kid says, oh, you know, such and such has been doing this. How long has it been going on? A month. Have you told anyone? No. And so that's where some of that, the skill building of being able to advocate for themselves is super important. And that's something I work with kids a lot. We practice the word. How could you tell? What words could you use to tell a teacher or tell a parent? Something like that. And sometimes, and I mean, I kind of have to, I take responsibility in this. We teach kids kindness, and we want to be kind, and we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And so sometimes they'll tell me, well, I didn't want to get anyone in trouble, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. So that's why I didn't tell. So that's another, that education piece between advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself versus being kind. We also need to make sure that students know who their safe people are in school that they can talk to. We start in kindergarten, teaching kids to identify people in school. It's so important for kids to have at least one person. It doesn't have to be their teacher. It doesn't have to be their counselor. It could be a teacher they had in the past. It could be a special teacher, somebody that they feel safe and comfortable going to. And kids always ask, could it be my, 7th grade sister? Well, it could, but you also need an adult, right? Like, yes, an older student can help you problem solve, but you need to also have an adult identified. And we tell them all the time, please report as soon as it happens. When you tell us 2 weeks later, it is very, very hard for us to be able to adequately investigate it. We call it being an upstander, not a bystander. So, a bystander is someone that stands by while something is going on, even if it's going on to yourself. An upstander is someone who reports it. The difference between reporting and tattling or snitching. Kids are always like, well, I don't want to tattle, I don't want to snitch. Tattling is when we are telling on someone to get them in trouble. Reporting or being an upstander is when we're telling on someone because they are in trouble, right? Like somebody is feeling unsafe. I am in trouble and I need help. And so we try and delineate that with the kids. We do lessons in bullying and harassment every single grade level. Of course, we want them to participate fully. And both sides, both the aggressor and the person who's been bullied, might work with the counselor at some point, just on some skill building as needed. So parents, what can you do? Number one, talk to your kids. Ask them, and these are the type of questions that you should be asking if you're looking for, are my kids safe, happy, being bullied, stuff at school? Could you play with them? Could you sit next to at lunch? If you could sit by anyone in class, who would you want to sit with? Who wouldn't you want to sit with? These types of questions of like getting in their head of the social situation happening in school. And some, like, I have a child who hates answering questions about school and had the unfortunate luck to be born to a school counselor who asks a lot of questions. So I have like a little dinner time bingo game that we play, and they have little questions like this in there, and he loves it because when we get bingo, guess what? We have ice cream that night or something, right? And everyone goes around the table and answers the question, who'd you eat lunch with today? I answer it, my husband answers it, right? And so anyway, just whatever creative way you can get at to get the true nature of what's happening in your kid's school day, do it. That is like number one, because you will hear when things are amiss. Find out who your child's safe person is in school. Go home today, tomorrow, they're in bed. who could you talk to if you had a big problem at school? If they say no one, you need to work, right? Let somebody know, talk to your kid, really talk it through. Well, what about, Coach Kim, you've had him every year for PE, right? Like, oh yeah, well, maybe he could be really, we work with it, but we appreciate your working with them too, to identify that safe person. And this year we have such a nice tie-in positivity project with talking about their kids with their responsibility to other people. It's there for us now. That language of other people matter. And okay, so my own daughter, when she was in 3rd grade, I came to lunch with her one day, and we're sitting there, and I noticed there was a little girl who I'd never seen before sitting like down the way at her table. And I said, who's that little girl? She was sitting by herself. And she said, oh, she's new this year. And I said, have you ever thought of like sitting with her or, asking her to sit with you? And she said, no. I said, why? And she said, I can't. And I said, why? She said, well, I don't want to. I was like, oh my word. And at that time, I didn't have this language of, well, other people, I'm trying to go into her with empathy and all this stuff. But like having this built-in language of positivity project and other people matter would have been such a great tool for me at that point. So I encourage you to kind of access some of that language. I know that Ms. Kenna sends about every week the different trait we're working on, but really looking for that positivity in others. And then we do ask that you report things that you hear from your kid. And it doesn't have to only be about your child. We have had some really amazing parents who have said, listen, my kid came home and told me something that was really concerning about this other kid. I don't know if it's true, but I just want to pass it along. And that has been some really valuable information that's helped us to be able to problem solve. And so if in doubt, report. You may not know if your kid is remembering it right or whatever, but just drop a line to the teacher. You could drop a line to me, one of the administrators. And then something that we ask within that, though, is that we try and make sure that confidentiality is maintained for everyone involved. So if your kid comes home and tells you, this happened with this and this and this kid today, report it to us for sure. Tell us the kids' names. But we do ask that you're not then telling everyone in the neighborhood, guess what I heard, such and such and such, right? Because we know that if it was you don't want that going all around. So we do ask that you respect the confidentiality of other students. And then finally, sometimes in serious cases, we might recommend that outside counseling resources be explored. And we can always hook you up with those. And it could be for your child who's been a target of bullying. It could also be if your child has been an aggressor in a bully situation, that we might say, you know what, this is a pattern we're seeing. Maybe we should think about some outside resources. So, question about parents' role.
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say that my child reports something to a teacher or to you, but I don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you come to me?
Yes, so let's go to the next part about the school's role. And I think that will answer that. And if it doesn't, let me know. Okay, so our role. The school has a big role in preventing bullying and addressing bullying and harassment because it's happening in school, right? So we play a really big role. So I'm going to break it down. So teachers, and I didn't put this on here and I should have, their main role, first of all, is to be instilling positivity project and responsive classroom and all those good routines and things that help to eliminate a situation where bullying might happen in the first place. And they also need to be vigilant about student interactions, particularly during unstructured time, because most of the time when something has happened, it's been recess, lunch, lining up. I can't tell you how many things happen when kids are lining up. I'm like, it's 2 minutes. How could you? Anyway, so teachers have the expectation that they are being extra vigilant. They take all reports seriously. The teacher's job is to inform administration. So teachers are not handling bullying on their own. Are they handling conflict on their own? Yes, all of them. But if it's something that has risen to bullying or harassment, it becomes an administration handled thing. Okay, so then once the administration hears something like that, their job is to investigate. And that may mean that they may have to take a day or two to talk to everyone that is supposedly involved, to gather information from teachers and specialists and things like that. Then informing all parents involved. So let's say we've got Johnny, Sally, and Timmy, and Johnny and Sally were the ones involved. Timmy was just someone who kind of knew what was going on. And we interviewed all of them. Would we be calling Johnny and Sally's mom? Yeah, because they're involved. Would we call Timmy's mom? Not necessarily. Because if all they were doing was, they just happened to pass and see something, or they're hearing a rumor or something, then they're not directly involved, and that's not rising to the level of needing to inform a parent about that. But if a child has been accused, if a child has reported bullying or harassment, parents are notified, usually by administration.
And we have up to 5 days before we call
Thank you
the
for
parent.
that. Yeah. And then the consequences are based on the SR&R, kind of like you said earlier. When we're looking at a kindergartner who had no idea what they were doing, is it going to be a little bit different than, a fourth grader that was very intentional? Yes, absolutely. But we're looking, there's criteria in the SR&R. If you go on the FCPS's website and search SR&R, you will see what comes up, and there's a little chart that talks about the different steps and stuff taken for consequences that are administered, and the administration follows that very carefully. And then they are always keeping records, and then there is a system that bullying gets reported into for the county. So it's very official, systematic. We take it very seriously at Cardinal Forest and at all of FCPS. So administration really has the really big role in response to bullying. For counselors, I know a lot of people kind of identify counselors with bullying because we teach about it. Our role is more in prevention. So we're kind of like teachers. If a student tells us something, and a lot of times we are the first line because we're that confidential person for them. Sometimes if it's something I'm not sure, maybe I'll do a little investigating first and I'll talk to a student or something. But if it's a serious report, even for me, it's going straight to administration because it becomes a disciplinary thing, and that's what administration is for. That's not what counselors are for. So my role is also to take kids seriously when they report and to inform administration. And so with conflict, I might call groups of students in to work on peer mediation and things like that. If something bullying or harassment has happened, we're working individually. We would never call the bully and the person who's been bullied to come together and try and work with me. That's not what we do, because what's happened is that the target is feeling unsafe. They're feeling targeted. We're not going to put them in a room with that, right? But I might be working individually with the aggressor to work on anger management skills or whatever, and then individually with the person who's been targeted for self-advocacy and things like that. But it would be an individual thing. And then, of course, I'm also maintaining student and family confidentiality, and we have lots of resources for outside resources or counseling as needed. So, final questions about the school's role when bullying is.
I have a question.
Yep.
So where does the school's role end? Because our kids go to after school together, after care, their neighbors. So where does that stop?
So I'm going to show you a little blurb about that is on a cyberbullying slide that kind of, I don't know, it sort of clarifies it. It's muddy. But so let's move on to that one final word. Okay. Cyberbullying, or any bullying that takes place on school property or at a school-sponsored event, is handled by us. SAC, this is a tricky one. SAC is on school property. SAC is not school sponsored. SAC is sponsored by Fairfax County government, right? That is a gray area. However, very many times I have two kids that are in SAC together come to me the next day and say this and this has happened, and we try and work that out. And certainly if it's something serious, we do. But if a parent is hearing that something is constantly happening in SAC, SAC needs to be informed, because SAC is a separate entity from us. If something happens at let's say we have a basketball game after school, or a movie night after school or something, it's on school property, yes, parents are there, but it's also a school-sponsored event, so we would also have some work with that. So once the child is welcome home, once they leave school property, which is what the out in front, they are not under our care anymore. So even if they're half a block down and something happened, it's not a school. Even if school was just ended, half a block, it's not a school jurisdiction anymore.
What usually
What about
happens,
school
Brian,
buses?
is it spills out into the school
Yes.
the next day,
Yeah.
into the classroom, onto the playground. And if it has any intent and intensity behind it, it'll peek its head during the school day. And then, we'll say, well, it started in SAC. And they say, well, it's in our school now. And then we have to take it.
School buses are school property, so we do handle conflict on school buses.
So would you want to know if something happened?
On a
If you-
school
like
bus?
an adult witnessed something, like
Yeah.
walking home?
I
off
mean,
school property?
yeah. If it involved two of our students, and so here's the next part of this, and this is about cyberbullying, but we can kind of generalize this. If it happens outside of school, it doesn't fall under school jurisdiction unless, this is from page 11 on the SR&R, the conduct is detrimental to the school, adversely affects school discipline, or results in a criminal charge or conviction. So like Ms. Kenna was saying, something happens with some kids and they're going to blows outside of school, and the next day they're expected to sit in math class together. That's going to affect school discipline, right? So then that's something that we would get involved in. The reason that I put this in the cyberbullying one is because I'm hearing all the time from 5th and 6th grade students, well, such and such said this on a group chat to me last night. All the time. And I can problem solve with them about what they could do. And usually number one is, please go tell your parent. Because we don't give consequences to kids because of something that they were texting about last night.
And for all parents that think their children don't text, they do.
They do.
I know there are ways on the cloud to watch what your kids are doing, but we all have to remember, most of us, our kids are smarter than us
Yeah.
coming with the digital
Yeah.
stuff. So Ms. Keyfaber's right. That happens a lot. And also, sadly, the kids don't think. They think when they delete it from their phone that it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's not. They also in the past, because a lot of upper grades and also in the middle and high school are on the Google Classroom.
Yes.
And that's Fairfax County property. So when they send something via that way, that's also under our quote unquote jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And again, when they delete it from their file, it doesn't mean it's deleted. And it's just, they don't think it's going to happen to them type of thing.
Well, and a couple of things. One, if your kid's playing Roblox, if your kid's playing Fortnite, if your kid's playing all these things that have chat capabilities and they're connected with friends from school, they've got the ability to chat, right? The second thing is, in school, sometimes, things will happen and we're like, how did they connect with each other online in school? And this Google, kids are smart. They'll sit there and they're supposed to be doing a Google slide for their science project. And instead what they're doing is creating a Google slide where they're typing a mean message and sharing it with everyone in their class. And this has really happened. And then other people have the ability to comment on that slide and that type of thing. And the teachers are being vigilant because you know what? When the teacher walks up, the kid has their science project back up. So it happens. And usually we find out about it because the kids get mad at whatever the kid said and then they come and tell somebody. Usually we find out about it, right? But it happens. So be vigilant, but there's only so much we can do in school when the cyberbullying type stuff has taken place at home. An example might be, so we've had this happen. Someone's in a group chat, is getting called names, come to school and is totally uncomfortable the next day, doesn't want to be around the people that were calling our names, and then comes and shows us a screenshot of everyone who said everything. What do we do then, Mr. Hirsch?
It's a problem.
It's a problem. And then then it's spilled over into school. Then we're investigating, especially when they have screenshots. I've had parents send me screenshots and printouts and things. And then that's when we then have a duty to get a little bit more.
I told the upper grades a story when I was at West Springfield about 3 or 4 years ago when we had the really bad snow. We had a 5th grade girl who got up in the morning, went on Google Classroom or Google whatever, the Google, as us old people like to say, and she just texted a friend, said, I really hope we have a snow day today. That's all she sent. Well, that friend sent it to all of her friends, who then sent it to someone who finagled it and said, I will kill anyone who goes to school. It went on. And then that kid sent it to everyone, I'm not even funny, with the name Brian in Fairfax County, and sent it to all of them with pictures. And they kept adding to it. And it was like 2 PM, and we were at school. It was just a bad day, but it was still school. And 3 cop cars show up at our front of the school because it was traced back to this girl who all she said was, I hope we have a snow day today. And she was stunned, and like, it was a great teaching lesson, but it just got way out of hand, and it ended up being a high school student who got a hold of it and was able to, because they could program like no other, and they got into the system, and it just, again, girl was totally innocent, but they just traced it back to her computer, which was at our school. So it's just crazy. Couple things as Ms. Kefeber wraps up. One thing all parents need to understand is, and I tell this to parents when I talk to them, it doesn't matter if your son or daughter has been suspended 27 times, been in trouble every day since they were 3. I don't take a he said, she said situation. I don't say, well, that kid's been in trouble a lot, so of course they did it. And I tell that to the kids. You're going to be, it's cliche, but it's innocent until proven guilty. And if we can't prove it, we will not, it's considered unfounded, because we can't, I will never take one child's word over another, because they know sometimes that, kids are not targeted, but they are known to get in trouble, and they say, oh, and if I will never, because you can't, because that's a Pandora's box that gets open.
Can I put a caveat to that, though? However, let's say there's a he said, she said, something happened in private, nobody can prove it. That doesn't mean that we won't still try and make it back into a safe environment.
Correct.
Which means, even though there might not be a huge consequence administered, there might still be that change in seating or to keep. So you know what? Okay, nothing happened. That's fine. But we're not going to talk to each other anymore. You guys need to be away.
And our job here is not to overreact, not to say not to react, but not to overreact, because I've never had a parent email and say, my child's being bothered. They always say they're being bullied, because that's the word. And they don't know, just from lack of knowledge, they just don't understand what Ms. Kefeber just said in her presentation. And it's hard. I mean, if you're a parent, obviously, it's your baby, no matter if they're at 5 years old or 16 years old. And but our job is, it's hard, but we have to take emotion out of it. And in the word investigate, it's tiresome. And it's called the bullying harassment system through the county, which is basically a website, which is a step-by-step for the administrator on what we have to do and how we every interview we type as we're talking, or we can put an attachment on. We interview, we go back, we list every time we make contact with both sides, and it's a tiresome and lengthy but important steps that we have to do, and that's why it could take us. Guess what? This is not all we do here as administrators, and we try to do it as fast as we can, but we can't just throw everything to the side while we're interviewing. It could be upwards of 5 to 10 students.
And by the way, most of that is confidential. So There's nothing more frustrating than hearing someone say, I reported this yesterday and nothing's been done. And we're like, oh my gosh, we've spent every waking moment of the past 2 days working on this, but there's confidentiality involved. So I'm going to wrap up just by showing you the last 2 things are some websites and some books. Some of the books I have up here, I'll leave them up here. I can just get them in the morning, and you're welcome to peruse. You can always email me any questions or give me a call. The other counselor, Ms. Ruck, is also a resource, of course. She's here part-time. I'm here every day, so please feel free. Any further questions, any clarifications, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Keith Favor. You know, I'm going to use a mic just to use as a control and see if it is worth bringing back, and just to make sure that everyone hears me for the rest of the meeting. You know, that was exactly the type of meeting, or earlier during summer, the board got together and we decided we were going to restructure our meetings. We were going to hold as much housekeeping outside of these PTA meetings and bring more educational pieces to the meetings so that parents can get that value. We have been meeting through teleconferences to handle more of the housekeeping stuff. So I don't feel bad taking a little extra time to touch on subjects like bullying. It's a lot. My son's 2 years old and he's come across it several times, which to me, I'm glad we took that time. But we do have to wrap up. We're getting close to the hour, and for the folks at home, I want to definitely touch on the treasurer's report. I want to give Lee some time to give us a rundown when we are on our finances. Ms. Kenna, if you have a few items to add on the principal's report. And we do have some announcements from Turkey Bingo. That's our upcoming big fundraiser. So Leanna, if you want to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes just to tell us where we're at. And then one final vote. Louise, do you want to use the mic, or you're close to the computer? I think you'll be fine with that.
Fine.
Cool. All right, so treasurer's report.
I'm gonna make this very short. We finally, we are pretty much done with membership, so I am preparing the check, already prepared the checks. We're paying our dues to the county and to the state. We file our taxes, and so we are going to apply for the renewal of our status of nonprofit, and should be getting that soon. What else do I have here? We got about $1,700 from Spiritware. That number is gonna come down because we have to pay the cost of the t-shirts. Building the nest, this important one, we are at $3,200. So we didn't get to the amount we were hoping for, but this is, to me, looks pretty good for a first year. On the expenses, we have started reimbursing teachers, and we paid for the math competition, which was requested last time we met. The amount requested was approved was $200, but I pay out $300 because they are going to refund us $100. The students are going to pay for their participation, which is about $10 per student, and they're going to start bringing checks to me. So I figure $100 would not break our bank. And we already contribute $2,200 towards the STEM activities. We have a budget of $3,500, so we already made a big contribution towards that. And that's it.
All right, thank you. I did want to give one last plug-in on Building the Nest, our fundraising, our armchair fundraiser. So it's not going away. We're simply shifting gears a little bit now that we're moving towards Turkey Bingo. Our messaging towards parents will be to go ahead and buy tickets for Turkey Bingo, or so they can participate in that event. And we do want to bring that back to Building the Nest event. Parents will still be able to donate on our website, so cardinalforestpta.com. They can go in and donate. It's not going anywhere. And a quick reminder, that fundraiser is our overall fund. We simply want to be able to pay for the stuff that we've been paying for throughout the years. Our field trips, our assemblies, makerspace, basically everything that we fund. That's what we're trying to help ameliorate. Sarah, did you have a question? Did you have?
I was going to ask if we were going to pick up the Building the Nest advertising like after Turkey Bingo, for like the holiday season with people doing their holiday charitable giving.
Yeah, that was the intent. So once Turkey Bingo is done with, then bring that back and possibly have another fundraiser, and you'll see on the agenda, and we won't have time to touch on it, but
maybe like a dinner night or a spaghetti dinner, just to make up for fun fair. The intent is to not have fun fair, so our goal is to maybe get at least 8,000 raised leading up to fun fair, and then we'll decide the magnitude of fun fair when it happens. Ms. Kenna, do you want?
Sure. Yeah, thanks to a lot of you today for the family barbecue option. It was a gorgeous day outside. I did want to let you know that if you haven't looked in Tuesday folders, that if you have a family member or you are a part of the in the service as part of our Veterans Day celebration and honoring veterans and heroes of past military service, that whether a child draws a picture. So we'll be having our Hall of Heroes that we put together out here. I don't know if you're all familiar, maybe our kindergarten families or not, but our staff, we have many staff members that are military connected, and we want to celebrate our military connected families here. Don't forget that Wednesday before Thanksgiving is now a full day holiday. But we will also be having our annual Thanksgiving luncheon. We really appreciate some volunteers, and I know we're going to put out a search for that. Was called Genius.
Silent
Genius. That one for some support. That will be, I believe it's 16th, 15th, and 16th and 17th, whatever is that Thursday and Friday before the Thanksgiving, and then that's about it. We just really appreciate the PTA support for all the things they do and provide our school with the kids are just loving you. If you're not a Twitter fan, or you are on Facebook, and so our Twitter feed, it feeds into Facebook. You can see how much use our makerspace and what the children are doing, using the materials that were purchased with PTA raised funds right here in our library. So it's good times, and the kids love it, and it helps them practice portrait of a graduate skills, communicating, collaborating, problem solving, critical thinking, things that they are doing. Our engineering classes for our young ones it's just skyrocketing. Kids love that part. So it's really adding a level of excitement to what is a specials time, and it's not just going to the computer lab and being on the computer. It's really thinking, creating, and going through the engineering process. So we're excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Leanne, do you want to come up here, or do you want to just kind of give us a rundown on where we're at with Turkey Bingo? Okay.
As Ms. Kenna said, Turkey Bingo is on the 16th of November. Doors are open at 6 p.m. Sixth grade is running concessions. They're going to have Chick-fil-A and pizza.
And then the bingo will start at 6:45 p.m. so you can get your seats. And then sign up went out today. Actually, some purple paper went out today with the ability to buy books in advance. Highly recommend you do that. And there's links for Sign Up Genius. We've put all of that on our Facebook page and on our PTA website. Trying to push more people to the website as well. And I'm still looking for a chairperson for next year. So somebody please sign up.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks, Julianne. Once again, Turkey Bingo, please go to our website, cardinalforestpta.com or .net, and you'll see under events how you can buy tickets to participate. We do have some announcements, but for the sake of time, we have a vote. Leanne, it was proposed that you'd like to participate in our board. Does anyone want to make a motion to suggest Leanne's participation? All right. And just to clarify, that would be for a second vice president position. So for the motion and the second motion, does anyone oppose Leanne being our new second VP? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
All right, well, welcome aboard, Leanne. Officially, even though she's been providing support for years. All right, well, we do have some upcoming Spirit Nights. Kim, I don't know if you want to take time, or should I direct people to our website where we have them up there?
Oh, you have them there?
Yep.
Okay. Well, there's a Litos night. It's the first week of December. Go to the website to see the exact dates. We're also gonna try to get the class 520 right next door to be
Mhm.
involved too. They've expressed some interest, thanks to Donna and Leanne's scouting for turkey bingo, and doing an official fundraising. So, that's upcoming in 5 weeks or so.
All right, and a reminder for everyone at home, we do have these nights where you go to a restaurant and any purchases or certain percentages come back to us. Kim does a good job of sending flyers on the Tuesday folders and on Facebook. You'll know when the next one's coming up the first week of December. Does anyone have any items they'd like to share for the good of the order? Okay, all right, and I think.
Well, I wanted to say thanks to the great muffins that were provided on the day of the walk and bike to school. You know, something impromptu like that turned out. You know, it wasn't a big hurrah, but it was a hurrah.
Yeah.
And we had the police things. We had a conversation about safety, and Miss Helfer, she contacted, and so we had a policeman out there to help escort families that wanted to walk over. And, it's another fun time for families to be together, bringing their kids to school.
Yeah.
So it worked out well.
Exactly. That's exactly what we want to be doing. Community-based, low budget, low effort events. But yeah, thanks Sarah for coordinating that. That worked out. And so I think we're all good, everyone. We ran out of time. If you guys have any questions, please post them on Facebook or on the YouTube channel.
Faces here tonight.
And we'll go ahead and
We have to
respond to you guys.
Thank
you. Oh, one last item, yeah. Yeah, we do have the minutes have been here from last meeting. If you guys have a second to take a look at them, does anyone want to make a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
I second.
All right, a second. Does anyone oppose approving last meeting's minutes? Okay. All in favor? Okay, so the minutes are approved and meeting adjourned at 8:10 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you run this one? Yes.